Hello, students. Welcome back to Mr. Armstrong Teaches Today, Pronouns Part 2. In Pronouns Part 1, we talked about the subjective pronouns and objective pronouns. In this video, I'm going to talk about possessive, reflexive, and some other types of pronouns that you might see here and there. Some of those other pronouns I've talked about in other videos, and I may very well make a video all about them in the not-too-distant future. Something to look forward to. But let's stay focused, shall we? Before we understand what these pronouns are, go ahead and write down the list of them. I think just in writing down these words, you will of course recognize them and start to think about how they are used. I'm sure you've used these pronouns before. Write them down in this list. Keep them in this order. Notice that the possessive and the reflexive both have counterparts. Keep those in order. Nice columns. Pause if you need to write all this stuff down, because now we're going to look at a definition and some examples. First, a definition. Possessive pronouns show possession or ownership of nouns, things, persons, places, ideas, nouns. Since pronouns replace nouns, these pronouns would really replace possessive nouns, those nouns with apostrophe S's. We'll look at those actually again a little bit in the other section. But go ahead and write this definition down. Did you do it? Now let's look at some examples. All right, check out this first example. She rode her bike. There is a single possessive pronoun, and it shows ownership of something else. Can you check your list and find it? Do you see what is possessed? Let's take a look. Her is the possessive pronoun. And what does she possess? A bike. It is her bike. See? Let's look at another one. Their cat is blue. What's the possessive pronoun in this sentence? And what is possessed? In this example, there is the possessive pronoun, and cat is the thing that is possessed. It is their cat. It is possessed by them. And so these possessive pronouns can come in front of nouns pretty much anywhere in a sentence. Anywhere a noun can be, anyway. And once again, these would be substituted in place of possessive nouns. So perhaps she in that first sentence is Tiffany. Tiffany rode Tiffany's bike, is how we would say that sentence without any pronouns. Or Bob and Janice's cat is blue. But in these instances, we have substituted those possessive nouns with possessive pronouns. Got it? Now, let's take a look at reflexive. Ah! Mr. Armstrong, that's a lot of notes. Write them down. Just pause if you need to. Reflexive pronouns, these are pronouns that end with self or selves, as you noticed writing those down in the list. These are pronouns used when the subject of the sentence is the same as one of the objects. So the object of the preposition, the direct object, or the indirect object. And they act as the objects in those sentences. Now you'll see tiny right after that there's also something called intensive. Now these are the same words, but they're just used to emphasize the subject. I'm not going to really talk about how these reflexive pronouns can act as intensive pronouns right now, but know that it exists. I'll probably make another video about that in the future. Notice also, though, that there is something involved with reflexive pronouns called an antecedent. Now, in the definition, it says that pronouns are used when the subject and the object is the same. And so, since we're using a reflexive pronoun in the object, it's basically referring back to the subject of the sentence, and that's what we call the antecedent. Ante just means kind of before. So we're referring back to something that came before, and that's what the antecedent is. We'll see some examples of that now. Okay, take a look at this example. I bought myself a book. In this example, we have a reflexive pronoun, and it's the same as the subject of the sentence. Can you find it? I'm going to go ahead and mark this sentence up so that we understand how it works a little bit better. It'll look like this. I is the simple subject. Bought is the verb. The thing that was bought is the direct object. Book. I bought book. And who received that book? The indirect object. Myself. I do this a lot. Myself is the indirect object. It is also a reflexive pronoun, and it is reflexing back on the antecedent, which in this instance is I. I is myself. Myself is I. See? Let's look at another example. Naomi poured tea for herself. Can you find the reflexive pronoun in this one? They're pretty easy to find considering they all end with self or selves. Let's take a look. Okay, so in this sentence, Naomi is the simple subject. poured is the verb. What was poured? Tea. It was poured for herself. I didn't draw a line through it, but for herself is a prepositional phrase. For is a preposition. Herself is the object of that preposition, and herself, of course, refers back to Naomi. And so herself, once again, is in the object position. It is the object of the preposition for, and it is reflexive in that it refers back to the antecedent, which is Naomi. Naomi is also the subject, the antecedent. Got it? I hope so, because we're moving on. Other. So I just kind of clumped a whole bunch of these other ones all together, partly because I've talked about them in other videos, and partly because I'll probably make a video all about them in the not too distant future. These are types of words that we have seen, some of these are types of words we've seen on the limiting adjectives, or also known as noun determiners lists. And these are sometimes words that come in front of nouns and behave as limiting adjectives, but sometimes they can stand alone, all by themselves. So sometimes they're pronouns, sometimes they're not. Other. And there's also some interrogative words that we can do this same thing with. What, which, whose. Sometimes they're in front of nouns behaving as adjectives, and sometimes they stand all by themselves and behave as pronouns. Let's take a look at what I mean real quick, but once again, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this. Okay, so I didn't include all the different types, but I think with these examples, you'll see how this concept works. So in the first two examples, I use the word that. Sometimes it's a pronoun, sometimes it's an adjective. In the first example, I like that car. That what? That car. The word that is pointing to a noun. It is behaving as a limiting adjective or a noun determiner. It is not a pronoun. However, if I was just to say, I like that, in this instance, we don't know that what. There's no nouns after that, so that is standing in place of whatever noun it is that I like. That is behaving as a pronoun. In the second example, that is her bike. Her is pointing to bike. But if I was to say, that is hers, I had to add an S to it, but it stands all by itself. Hers, what? We don't know, but it belongs to her. Whatever it is, it's a thing. It belongs to her, and in this instance, hers is behaving as a pronoun, taking the place of that thing. And then finally, an example of how a possessive noun can actually kind of behave as a pronoun. It is Fyodor's house. In this instance, Fyodor's, a possessive noun, is behaving as an adjective, a limiting adjective, modifying the noun house. Fyodor's what? Fyodor's house. Fyodor's is an adjective. But if I was just to say, it is Fyodor's, in this instance, we don't really know what we're talking about. Maybe we're talking about the house. Maybe we're talking about a ukulele. I don't know. But Fyodor's is behaving as a pronoun because we're not talking about Fyodor. That's not the thing. It belongs to Fyodor, whatever it is. But we don't know what it is because it's not in the sentence. And so Fyodor's is behaving as a kind of a pronoun. And any of the different types of examples listed in the definition from before can behave this way. Sometimes they're in front of nouns. Sometimes they're all by themselves. If they're all by themselves, then they are technically behaving as a pronoun. Other. Got it? I hope so, because it's over. We did it! We knocked out the whole list. Awesome. If you have any questions about any of these concepts, please put them in the comments below, or you can ask me in class. That concludes pronouns for now, but like I said, there will probably be another video in the future that focuses more on those others, and you can always go back and watch some of the previous videos, namely limiting adjectives and noun determiners, to learn a little bit more about those if you wish. Like and subscribe if that's the kind of thing that you do. Otherwise, I'll teach you again very soon. Fare thee well.